And as people become aware that that is, in fact, the standard, I think there will be a lot more concern expressed.
May I respectfully disagree on that point? When you look at the 14 federal agencies that regulate our industry, and let's stick with the EPA, I would then have to ask, what are they spending hundreds of millions of dollars hiring scientists, research experts to do a lot of the work that I think you just alluded to in working in partnership with us? Because depending on the agency, if it's toys, it's the Consumer Product Safety Commission. If it's certain other products, it's the FDA. If it's other products, it's EPA. So those are just three agencies right there. And if you look at the billions of dollars that support those agencies, I have to respectfully disagree that that work isn't taking place. If it's not taking place, then I would have to ask, what are all of these federal workers doing? And in those agencies, there are experts. I know that at the Consumer Product Safety Commission, which regulates toys, has experts that have spent their career at that agency on one particular compound. So I think we kind of sometimes lose sight of the fact that the government really is doing something. And, you know, I'm not here to speak on their behalf. I wish they would come to some of these hearings. But I do know that we work closely with all of those agents, at least those three that I mentioned, and some of the others.
I understand and appreciate what you're saying, and I'm not going to comment on whether the federal government is spending its money well or not in this area, but I'll make an observation. The congressional hearing that I referred to was about the Toxic Substances Control Act, TSCA, which I'm sure you're well familiar with, which has been around for a very long time. I'm not sure exactly when they enacted it.
1976.
Okay, so well over a quarter century. And you probably know the answer to this question. How many chemicals has the federal government banned under TSCA in the 30-some-odd years that it has existed?
I believe the number is 5.
5 out of about 80,000 that are currently in use. I realize you're a representative of the industry, but I'm gonna say right now, I would not believe for a single moment that there are 5 out of 80,000, only 5 out of 80,000 that are problematic. And I think the problem with TSCA is it just isn't working, and it hasn't worked for a very long time. And they're not making it work, regardless of what amount of money they're spending or not spending on it. That's why folks like us and other states around the nation have felt the need to address this issue, because it simply isn't being done at the federal level. And I'm not anti-chemical. I have an appreciation for all of the wonderful things that you suggested earlier on. Chemicals are a part of our everyday life. They're all around us. They're a necessity. But some of them hurt people. And we need to find out which ones those are and address that. And that's not chemical bashing. That's just the way it is. That's the way things are. And again, when you talk about the federal government, well, I won't belabor the point, but 5 out of 80,000 is not, come on.
Well, if I may, Assemblyman, although I respectfully disagreed on an earlier point, I do agree with you that TSCA needs to be reformed, and we have called for reform of TSCA. We have 10 principles. I believe I have submitted those in the past. I will submit them again. So I think on that page, we're together. On the 80,000, that list was created in 1976, 1977. There are a lot of chemicals on that list of 80,000, and I've heard as many as 100,000, that are either no longer in use, are in such small proportions that they're not used commercially, that others are used for military applications. In terms of the point that I think you're trying to make, if we really want to get the EPA and TSCA focused, that they really should be focused on what we call the high volume production chemicals. And in that category, there are 7,500. So it's we shouldn't be focusing on the 80,000 because some of those don't exist anymore. Focus, and we've taken the position that, yes, this is where, especially in an era of limited government resources, let's focus on those that are really in commerce, and it's that 7,500. The second point is that, yes, TSCA, like any law, eventually needs to be reformed, revised, whatever nomenclature you want to use. And we have been on the record for at least 2 or 3 years that we support TSCA reform. Now, look at it from our perspective that you've got a Congress that isn't necessarily friendly to regulation. We come along and say, hey, this is one that we need because from an industry perspective, we need a level playing field. And we think that this will help with that level playing field. So we're in the game as well, and it is somewhat of an uphill battle for us on our side of the table.
Well, I think if the industry was out there saying regulate us more, they might feel a little differently about it. But that raises the question then of what type of regulation or change in regulations. You're saying you're okay with making some changes in the way products are regulated. So what kind of changes would you support?
Again, based on our principles, we do recognize vulnerable populations like children, that there's got to be, as I mentioned, that higher bar. Certainly something that needs to be looked at very seriously in terms of TSCA reform. We still stand by the fact that science has to play an important role here. I'm trying to think what the other 8 principles are. But again, we can share those with the committee again, and we could have another conversation. But we are out there. We have talked about TSCA reform, not just here, in the halls of Congress. We've got counterparts at the federal level that have talked to members of both sides of the aisle, in both houses, on this issue.
I appreciate that, but again, my previous comments were in response to your suggestion that the federal government is spending a lot of time and effort. And if it was something out there that was really bad for us, they know about it and they take care of it. But, under TSCA, they didn't even ban asbestos. I mean, so